So hello and welcome to lesson 4. You're very welcome to this lesson all about vocabulary, and well done for making it this far. It's nearly over. So we're at lesson 4. Tomorrow we're going to do lesson 5 and then you've completed the challenge. So thank you very much for making it this far, and thank you to all of you who have completed the task so far. It makes a huge difference to me if I can see that my work is actually helping people and making a difference. Okay, so let's move on to this week. So let's just reiterate what we've been doing. Let's review what we've been doing this week. So first of all, we started off with how to understand the question, and that's really, really important. And we've been getting a number of questions from people who are still a little bit confused with different things. But the main thing you need to remember is this is a complete process, and I would wait until Friday until we complete the whole course before you start worrying about, I don't understand this or I don't understand that. It's been designed, the course has been designed as a coherent piece of work where it builds on each of the lessons and it builds up your knowledge throughout that. So, don't worry if you're not getting everything immediately. Then we looked at structure, and yesterday we looked at how to develop our main ideas. So today we're going to look at vocabulary, we're going to look at paraphrasing, and we're going to look at conclusions, and then tomorrow we're going to finish off with grammar. So to remember, a lot of you have been asking, is this applicable to opinion questions or problem solution questions or double questions? Most of the stuff that we're doing is only applicable to discussion questions. Well, the reason why we do that is it's very confusing to do many different types of questions, and it just doesn't work. We tried that before and it doesn't really work, and it's really important that you go deep into each type of question, because if you only look at it on the surface, then it really isn't much use to you, and it can actually be very dangerous to, for example, just look at a basic structure for each of the different types of question and not really understand exactly what you need to do. And a number of you have also been asking about this. So a lot of you have been asking when this is open again, when you can join it, how you can join it. A lot of you have been asking, like, can I get help with speaking or reading or listening or task 1 or any of the other types of question? But let's just keep our focus on the challenge. In the past, what's happened is everybody gets very excited about IELTS VIP and they don't really completely focus on the challenge. What I want is for all of you who have paid $1 at the end of the week to say, that was the best $1 I ever had. There are only a very small number of places on the VIP course available. Most of you will not be able to get in. So I do not want this to become like a marketing event for IELTS VIP. So let's keep focusing on the challenge, and that will help everybody. So what are we going to do today? So there are many important parts of the IELTS test, but vocabulary is probably the most important, because it influences all 4 skills, like the reading test and the listening test. For many of you, if you're struggling with reading and listening, the thing that's holding you back is vocabulary. The reading test especially is as much a vocabulary test as it is a reading test, and it obviously helps with speaking and writing as well. So improving your vocabulary will improve your chances in all 4 skills. So it's 25% of your mark for writing and speaking, but it's also a huge part of listening and vocabulary as well. And it influences your ability to communicate clearly in English. So it's crucial for your overall performance in both speaking and writing. So it only counts, it counts for 25% of your total mark for speaking and writing. But I think it's much more important than that. So you're going to be given a mark out of 25%, but I think good vocabulary helps the other parts as well. It makes your writing more coherent and cohesive. It enables you to answer the question properly, so it helps you with task achievement. And it can even help you a little bit with grammar as well, because you need a knowledge of grammar in order to communicate clearly as well, and we'll look at grammar tomorrow. So the specific things that we're going to look at in this lesson are why everything you've been taught about vocabulary is probably wrong. And I'm going to show you actually it was really great, because just today one of the students said, my teacher told me that your writing or your lessons are wrong, and it was to do with vocabulary. So I'm going to show you that. How you can improve your vocabulary today and in the future. So for a lot of the things that I have short-term strategies and long-term strategies. So we're going to show you short-term strategies for improving things immediately and longer-term strategies for people who have a bit more time. And we're going to look at paraphrasing, and we're going to look at conclusions. So we're going to use conclusions to help us with paraphrasing and to use them as a context. All right, so what do you actually need vocabulary for? So you must demonstrate to the examiner that you know how to use vocabulary properly. You will not do that by learning long lists of words provided by your IELTS teacher who gave you a band 9 word list. That is not how you demonstrate how you can communicate clearly in English, by just regurgitating a long list of words. This does not work. It's the worst thing that you could ever do. You must clearly convey your message using vocabulary you already have. So the vocabulary that you already have, the vocabulary that you have within your grasp at the moment, that's the vocabulary that you should be using. When you sit down to do that speaking test or that writing test, the vocabulary that you currently have, that's the vocabulary that you should be trying to use, because you need to use vocabulary appropriately and you need to use it accurately. So if you're trying to use vocabulary you do not know, or you just have a very, very loose grasp on, you're going to be using it either inaccurately or inappropriately, and that is going to lower your score. You would not believe the number of students who consistently get a band 5 or a band 5.5 that tell me that or tell my other students who are getting 7, 8 or 9 that their language is too simple. So the band 5, 5.5 students are criticizing the band 7, 8 and 9 students for being too simple. Who do you think is correct? So style is also very important. You must use words that are appropriate to use in the circumstances that you're using them. Words can be technically accurate, but they can be completely inappropriate. So to explain this properly and really show you exactly what this means, I'm going to show you 2 sentences. And what I want you to do is tell me which of the 2 sentences do you think would get a higher mark for vocabulary. So here's the first sentence. I agree that global warming is caused by the release of carbon dioxide into the Earth's atmosphere. I demonstrably am in positive agreement with the thesis that the gradual warming of this planetary orb is caused by the secretion of carbon atomic particles into the gaseous blanket that surrounds our globe. Who do you think is going to get a higher mark? So when I show this to students, 90% of them will say the second one. If you say the second one, you're probably wrong. The second student has no awareness of style, has no awareness of appropriacy. What they've done is they have memorized a huge list of so-called band 9 words, and they're trying to show off to the examiner. And what happens to people that show off? They normally make a fool of themselves. So I have completed this. I've taken it from a number of different students. This wasn't one student, but a lot of different students using similar language to this. Obviously, I've used correct grammar here, and I've used correct collocations and things like that. However, if you are a student and you're trying to use this type of language, you are constantly going to be making mistakes. If you constantly make mistakes, you're going to get a band 6 or a band 5 for vocabulary. So this one, even though many of you think that it's simple, it's correct. It is accurate. It is appropriate. It does exactly what it is trying to do. Most people will look at the second one and be like, what is this person even talking about? This person is completely clear about what they want to say, and the reader knows exactly what they want to say. And that's the mindset shift that you need to grasp. Many of you will be thinking right now, I don't believe him, because you've been taught by teachers the exact opposite of what I'm saying. If you still believe that, and you're still consistently getting a band 5, 5.5 or 6, what have you got to lose? So accuracy. You must use the word or phrase correctly, obviously. This means that the meaning, use, grammar and collocations must all be correct. So all of those different things need to be correct. The meaning, the use, the grammar, the collocations. In writing, the spelling must be correct. If you're using vocabulary that you don't know how to use, How often do you think the meaning, the use of the grammar, or the collocations, or the spelling might be wrong? If you're using words that you've not learned correctly, you're probably getting them wrong. This is lowering your score, not improving it. So I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself a little bit, but for many of you, you still probably do not believe me. So it's worth emphasizing this and repeating this. So, do I have enough vocabulary? So you should have enough vocabulary to discuss the common topics with precision and flexibility. These requirements are not as high as you think, and you're probably able to do this already. Bad teaching has taught you that you're both not good enough, which is a terrible thing to say to a student, and that you should use methods that actually lower your score. So many of your teachers, and I'm not doing this to say that I'm the best teacher in the world or anything like that. I'm not saying that because that's impossible to prove, and that's impossible to judge. But many of your teachers are telling you that you're not good enough, your vocabulary is not good enough, and they're actually teaching you things that are lowering your score. So be very, very careful. So let's look at an analogy. You must get the basics correct. So you must get comfortable with the basics first. Look at the work I produced yesterday. It is mostly basic vocabulary, but I would easily get a band 9 for vocabulary because the examiners are not looking for fancy vocabulary that you might get correct once in your whole essay. They're looking that you get everything correct if you want to get a band 9. They're looking at both the basic stuff and the more complicated stuff. So it's kind of like, someone who learns a list of band 9 vocabulary, it's kind of like they're putting the decorations and the icing on the cake, but they do not know how to cook or bake the cake. They don't know what they're doing. So when you cut into it and when you actually look at it, it's just air underneath or just a terrible cake. The person that's getting a band 9 will be able to do all of the basics correct. So they'll be able to, bake a beautiful cake, and they will be able to have, a little bit of decoration on the top with some nice high level vocabulary. A band 7 student doesn't need all this fancy stuff. They just need to be getting the basics correct. So to emphasize this is, and sorry if you're embarrassed, hi Tish, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. But you posted this in the public group, so I didn't think that you would mind. And it's not your fault, it's your teacher's fault. So you said, "Dear Chris, thanks for such great lessons. I showed this to my local teacher, and she says the language is too simple." So what do we think about this, guys? Is the local teacher correct? Or do you think that somebody who, and again, I'm not saying that I'm the best IELTS teacher in the world, because that's impossible to judge. However, if you look at my testimonials page on my website, or you look at my YouTube channel and see how many successful students have done interviews with me, I have more successful students, proven successful students, than any other teacher in the world, as far as I'm aware. And every single one of those students, what I told them was, simplify your language. You're trying to be too complex. You're trying to be too fancy. And from 90% of them, it wasn't until they started simplifying their language that they got a higher score. It sounds totally counterintuitive. It sounds crazy that in order to get a higher score, you simplify things, but it's totally true. So, how to improve today? So now we're going to look at short-term and long-term strategies to improve your vocabulary. So, you need to change your whole mindset about vocabulary. So would you try to become stronger by lifting the heaviest weight in the gym? Imagine you just started at the gym, you're obviously not very strong, but you want to get stronger. Would you go and lift a 200 kilogram weight? No, you wouldn't. So why do you think learning so-called band 9 lists of words is going to help you in the IELTS test? If you lift the heaviest weight in the gym, you're going to drop it on your head and you'll probably kill yourself. If you're using a long list of words that you don't know how to use, you're going to fail the test. You'll get a band 5 or a band 6. Focus on using the words you already have to clearly answer the question. So the vocabulary that you already have, if you want to improve your vocabulary instantly today, is to take the vocabulary that you currently know and you're currently confident about and you're comfortable using and use it. Follow the 100% rule. Do not use any words or phrases unless you're 100% sure about them. In the writing test, you should be sure about the collocations, the spelling, the meaning, the use, the grammar, all of these different things, because if you're not, you're probably going to be making a mistake. Now, many of you right now are thinking, I'm not good enough. I don't have enough vocabulary. You do. Don't listen to those teachers that are telling you you're not good enough. We can always improve. Everybody can improve. Professors at Cambridge and Oxford can improve their vocabulary. But you should not have this attitude that you are not good enough and you'll never be able to get the score you need. Try this. Try simplifying your language. Try using the vocabulary you're confident using, you're comfortable using, and see your scores improve pretty much immediately. But we also want to have a longer term strategy, because all of you should be trying to improve your vocabulary. And if you're, hoping to get a job in an English speaking country, improving your vocabulary is something that you want to do anyway, because it allows you to effectively communicate with people and sound more fluent and more coherent. So to follow the 100% rule, you must learn a word 100%. So the key to long-term improvement in your vocabulary is not just to look at a word and maybe translate it into your own language. That's a terrible idea. Or just write a word and, maybe write the meaning beside it. You should be writing the word down and the meaning and an example sentence and collocations and synonyms and antonyms and anything else that helps you learn that word or phrase 100%. Meaning is obviously important, but so are synonyms and style and spelling and grammar and collocations. You need to make these part of your learning process. So when you see a new word or phrase, it is better to spend 1 minute or 2 minutes writing that word down in a vocabulary book or an app or whatever you have, and writing all of these different things beside it, and then you can review that word, and then you'll actually be able to use that word, because there's a huge difference between learning a word and using a word effectively. So if we summarize this process, use real sources of English. So don't use lists of words, because you can't see the words in context. Newspapers, books, articles, podcasts, anything basically that will help you learn vocabulary is basically any real source of English. So once you have that, then you can start recording your vocabulary properly. Buy a book that is your vocabulary book and start filling it up. And then you review that, and then you use that. People who use this strategy long term not only get higher IELTS scores and, move to the country of their dreams and get the job of their dreams, but they just become far more confident about using the English language and far better communicators. So it's really important that you do this, and it's something that my most successful students, they all do this. That's one of the things that they have in common. So paraphrasing. This is a key skill because you will have to do it several times in a Band 7+ essay. You'll also have to do it in Task 1 for general training and academic. You'll have to do it in the speaking test. So it's a really, really important skill. You will have to paraphrase the question in your introduction, but it doesn't stop there. That's not the only place where you need to paraphrase. There are multiple other times when you'll have to do this, such as in your topic sentences, in the main body, and in the conclusion when you summarize your main ideas. You're always basically talking about the same kind of thing and the same ideas, but you're using different language, and you're demonstrating that you can do that. So how to paraphrase? The starting point is to simply state things again in your own words. The more advanced you are, the easier this will be. So if you're very advanced, me saying to you, just paraphrase it. Just say it again in your own words. People at a very advanced level will get that immediately, and they'll be able to just do that. But if you're struggling and you don't think that you are as advanced, sorry, I can't speak anymore, as advanced as you should be, then here's some extra advice. So you must always remember that it must mean the same thing, and it must also be 100% accurate. Alright, so we're going to talk about common mistakes and the main things that people do wrong. But if you just remember that sentence, it's really going to help you. It must mean the same thing, and it must be 100% accurate. The grammar must be accurate, the collocations must be accurate, the meaning must be accurate, and it must mean the same thing. If you remember that sentence, you are going to be far more effective at paraphrasing, because that's basically what it is. This is why paraphrasing is such a good test of your ability. Only people with a certain level of English know how to do it. However, that doesn't mean that you should just give up. So I'll often get students who say to me, I just don't want to do this. I don't want to paraphrase so many different times, and I don't want to have to vary my language and stuff. And I said, okay, that's fine, but you're never ever going to get a band 7 or above on the IELTS writing test. So don't think that that's a sign that you should just give up. Alright, it just means that you are not there yet. So either you need to learn how to paraphrase a little bit more effectively, or improve your vocabulary a little bit more, improve your grammar a little bit more. But everybody can get there, guys, so don't give up. But it's basically like saying, like, imagine doing the driving test, but telling your instructor, yeah, I want a driving license, but I don't want you to test me on parking. Or I don't want you to test me on braking or acceleration. These are essential things that you need to do in order to get a 7 or above. So it's best to focus on them, learn them. And it doesn't matter what English test you do. It doesn't matter whether it's IELTS or OET or TOEFL or whatever it is. Unless you have a certain level of English, you're never going to pass it. So let's look at how to paraphrase. First, you have to understand what you're changing. So much like lesson 1, where we talked about you can't answer the question properly unless you understand the question, you can't paraphrase properly unless you understand what you're actually changing. So take, a few seconds to do that. You wouldn't believe the number of people who just don't do that. Consider what you're actually changing. Are there any different word forms or synonyms or examples or different things that we're going to look at in a minute that you could use to change it? Are there any obvious things that will help you change it? And then try it and check for meaning and accuracy. So a lot of the time when I'm paraphrasing, what I'll do is I will quickly write it out, using a pencil, and I'll have an eraser, and I'll write it out one time, and I'll notice that there's a few things that I could improve, or a few things that I might want to delete, or a few corrections. Everybody makes mistakes. So using a pencil and an eraser and allowing yourself that freedom can really, really help you. Rarely are you able to just look at something and immediately paraphrase it without having to, redraft it a little bit. And you will have time to do that once you get used to it. Don't worry too much about timing. So we're going to continue now with paraphrasing, but we're going to look at conclusions, and we're going to use conclusions to help us with learning how to paraphrase. So conclusions. A simple way to write a conclusion is to simply paraphrase your introduction. Very, very simple. You just take parts of your introduction. Doesn't have to be your whole introduction, but take the essential elements of it and just paraphrase it. You will simply take your introduction and state it in a different way so that it means the same thing but with different words. So if we think about the structure of our essay, the introduction is, this is what I'm going to talk about. The main body is, this is me fully developing those ideas. And the conclusion is, this is what I just talked about. So look up any, legitimate peer-reviewed academic journal with academic articles in it, and you'll see in the introduction, they start off with, this is what we're going to talk about. The main body, they're getting into the detail, they're developing those ideas, and the conclusion is, this is a summary of what we just talked about. So that should be your general structure. And therefore, you're going to have to paraphrase a lot. You're going to have to use synonyms and varying your language in that way. There's no other way around it, guys. You have to do this. This is the way that it's done. And this is a very good test of your English, which is why they do this. So conclusions and paraphrasing. Here is my question. Here is my introduction. And what I'm going to do with the paraphrase, what I'm going to do to create the conclusion is just going to take this bit in red. Although free distribution can enhance research, this essay believes that it can lead to threats to national security. So I'm basically just going to take this, and I'll show you how to do this in a minute after we finally finish with paraphrasing. And we're going to paraphrase this to create our conclusion. But first, how to paraphrase. Okay, so there's many different ways that you can paraphrase. We don't really have time. As you can see, we're at 25 minutes in this lesson already, and To be honest, the best way to improve your paraphrasing is through trial, feedback, and error. Trial and error, getting feedback on your work, getting a teacher to give you that feedback and knowing where you're going wrong. That's the best way to do it. But for anybody who doesn't want to do that, doesn't have the time, doesn't have the money, let's get into how to paraphrase. So you can use synonyms, so words that mean the same. But are different words that mean the same. You can use different collocations. You can use different word forms. You can use examples, and you can also change the structure around. Rarely are you going to do all of these things at the same time. Think about these as just different tools in your toolkit. These are just different ways of doing the same thing. So sometimes you'll use synonyms, sometimes you use collocations, sometimes it'll be a combination of these different techniques. Think about building a house, you're going to use different tools in different orders. So let's look at these in a little bit more detail. So we're going to use this introduction to help us. Synonyms, okay, business, commerce. All right, business and commerce in this context, they mean the same thing. They're synonyms. Collocations, widely shared, freely shared. So one of the key mistakes or key misconceptions, let's say, is that you can never repeat a word, that you should never repeat a word. So a lot of you are looking at this and saying, well, you used shared twice. No, I didn't. What I did was I used widely shared and freely shared. These are two different collocations. Do you think that someone with a wide range of vocabulary can do this? Or does it show that you have a very limited range of vocabulary? Somebody who has a wide range of collocations has a wide range of vocabulary. So you're actually demonstrating to the examiner that you do have a wide range of vocabulary by using different collocations. So if you're using different collocations, different units of language, don't be afraid to repeat words sometimes. Especially, I'm not going to mention particular countries, but there are particular countries where the local teachers just believe that you can never ever repeat a word. That is nonsense. Word form, so science, scientific. All right, so again, a lot of people will look at this and say, you're repeating the same word. It's not the same word. It's a different form of the same word. So we have the root word, the science, and then scientific. All right. So you can change the word form, and it's no problem to do that. Again, someone with limited vocabulary will not be able to do that. Someone with a wide range in vocabulary will be able to do that. Threats to national security, an example of that is terrorism. All right. So terrorism is an example of a threat to national security. So that's a way that you can do that. So if it was talking about soft drinks, you could use, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Fanta, stuff like that. If they're talking about cars, you could use different examples of cars, or vehicles. You could use different examples of that. So again, you're not going to use all of these, or you might use all of these, but you're not going to, use synonyms and then use collocations and then use word forms. These again are just tools in your toolkit to help you with paraphrasing. So common mistake number 1, use of synonyms. All right, so the one we showed you here was business and commerce, but what a lot of people do, what a lot of students do when they're doing practice essays, is they'll just Google the word business and the word synonym together, and they'll get this. All right, so if you Google business synonym, you'll get all of these different things. So all of these are synonyms of business, but that doesn't mean that you can automatically use them. Some of them you can use them, most of them you can't. Either they're inaccurate, or they're inappropriate, or they just are too specific, they're too vague. How do you improve this? By reading, by improving your language, by improving your vocabulary. You'll get to know the difference between synonyms that you can use and synonyms that you can't use. Just because you Google it does not mean that you can, and Google tells you that these are synonyms, or a thesaurus tells you that they're synonyms, does not mean you can automatically use them in your essay. Common mistake number 2, use of collocations. So a lot of you, again, using Google or thesauruses, what you do is you take 2 words, you look for synonyms of widely, for example, and synonyms of shared, and you just stick them together. All right, collocations are words that naturally go together. someone who doesn't have a very high level of English will consistently make collocation errors. Somebody who has a very high level of English will not make those errors and will use collocations effectively. So let's look at some that are effective. So sharing of data. Sharing and data, they go together. Sharing of data. But if we Googled sharing and we Googled data, we'll see participate of evidence. Okay, participate is a synonym of sharing. Data and evidence, they're synonyms, but when you put them together, they don't make any sense. They don't collocate together. Same with administer of material. Sharing and administer, they're two synonyms. Data and material are synonyms, but when you just stick these together, they don't work. Again, reading, listening to English, improving your vocabulary, improving your awareness of the language is going to help you avoid collocation mistakes and is going to help you use collocations more effectively. Common mistake number 3, grammar mistakes. So the sharing of data is beneficial. So we've taken this from the introduction. The free distribution of information is valuable. So that's correct. That's fine. That's grammatically correct. But if you said free distribution in information very valuable, you've just wasted your time because you've made one mistake here, you've dropped the article, you've used a preposition, and you have missed out a verb. So what happens is students are so obsessed with changing things and with using synonyms and things like that, and but when they put it all together, they forget that it needs to be grammatically accurate also. So there are many things you have to think about, guys, but there's no way around this. Common mistake number 4. Trying to use words, phrases, or structures you're not capable of using yet. It is better to write a simple sentence with simple words that is correct than a complex sentence with complex words that is incorrect. I'm going to repeat that because it's probably the most important sentence on this entire course, and it's the sentence that has helped more of my students get a band 7 or above than anything else. It is better to write a simple sentence with simple words that is correct than a complex sentence with complex words that is full of mistakes. Now I've put simple in quotation marks because I'm not advocating that you use, 2-letter words or 3-letter words consistently throughout your essay. What I'm saying is do not use words that are way beyond your grasp, that you just don't fully understand. Use the words and the structures and the grammar and everything that you know currently and that you're comfortable using to produce clear, accurate sentences that help you convey meaning and help you answer the question. So, challenge number 4. Paraphrase the essential information below. So I've taken the essential information from that introduction, and what I want you to do is do this. I want you to write a conclusion. So you're going to say, in conclusion, although view you disagree with, this essay believes that view you agree with. But the bit in the brackets, what I want you to do is take the essential information from here and paraphrase it. Alright, so all you're doing is just taking this and paraphrasing it to produce a short, accurate, effective conclusion. So for example, in conclusion, although IELTS requires a huge amount of work, I believe that it is worth doing because of the opportunities it can provide. So what I've done here, this is the structure of my conclusion. In conclusion, although, and then the view you disagree with. This essay believes, or I believe, it doesn't really matter, that plus the view you agree with. So, guidance. This is all part of a multi-step process and you must complete each part. Keep it simple. The worst thing you can do is overthink this. Do the challenge. It's very, very important, and post it below this video. Thanks very much, guys. See you at 6 p.m. I'm anticipating a lot of questions and a lot of people disagreeing with me. That's fine if you want to do that. But join me at 6 p.m. if you can. If you don't make it, you can watch the replay. It'll be posted in the group. Thank you very much, guys. Bye-bye.